The great hall on Nexus Prime buzzed with voices from 200 different worlds. Jake Morrison sat in his chair and looked around at all the strange faces and forms that filled the massive room. Some aliens looked like giant insects, others moved like liquid metal, and many had shapes that hurt his human eyes to look at for too long. Next to him, Lisa Brooks checked her notes one more time. They had traveled so far from Earth just to be here today, the seating arrangement told Jake. Everything he needed to know about where humans stood in this galaxy. Earth's delegation sat in the back corner with other new species. The important aliens sat up front in fancy chairs that probably cost more than most human cities. Jake had been a diplomat for 15 years, but he had never felt so small and out of place. Chancellor Vexthara rose from his crystal throne. The Zephyrian leader stood 3 times taller than any human, and his body shifted colors like a living rainbow. When he spoke, his voice filled every corner of the hall without any need for speakers or microphones. Jake had to admit it was impressive, even if the Chancellor's tone made his skin crawl. "We gather today for our yearly review of new species applications," Vexthara announced. His crystalline form flickered with what Jake had learned was amusement. Among his kind, today we must decide the fate of several primitive worlds that seek to join our great civilization. Laughter rippled through the hall. It came in clicks, whistles, and sounds that Jake could not even name. But he understood the meaning well enough. The established species found the very idea of new members amusing. "First on our list," the Chancellor continued, "are the humans of the 3rd planet in the Sol system." He gestured toward Jake and Lisa with one of his 4 arms. "These mammals have asked for full membership in our council, despite achieving spaceflight only 50 of their years ago." More laughter. Jake felt his jaw clench, but he forced himself to stay calm. Lisa put her hand on his arm, a quiet reminder to follow protocol. They had come here to join the galactic community, not to start a fight. The Chancellor activated a holographic display that showed images of human technology. Their ships looked crude and ugly next to the sleek vessels of other species. Their weapons seemed primitive. Their cities appeared small and dirty compared to the crystal spires and floating platforms of advanced worlds. "Observe their technology," Vexthara said with obvious distaste. "They still burn chemicals to move through space. Their ships are made of simple metals that any child could bend. They use projectile weapons that fire solid objects instead of proper energy beams. Most embarrassing of all, they cannot even breathe in space without carrying their atmosphere with them in bottles." The laughter grew louder. Jake saw aliens pointing at the images and making gestures that he was sure were not complimentary. Some species he had never seen before were now joining in the mockery of humanity. Silmora, the snake-like delegate from Corva, raised her scaled head to speak. "Honored Chancellor, these humans claim to be intelligent, yet they still fight wars among themselves. Their own planet shows damage from their careless actions. How can such a backward species contribute anything meaningful to our advanced civilization?" Jake felt his face grow hot. Every word was like a slap. These aliens were talking about humanity like they were discussing a pet that might not be house-trained yet. "Perhaps," suggested Yoleneth from the Drakmor delegation, "we should place them in the children's category for now. 1,000 years should give them time to grow up and learn proper behavior." The hall erupted in approval. Aliens that Jake had never met were now voting on humanity's future based on a few minutes of cruel jokes. He watched as species after species nodded their agreement with the suggestion. 1,000 years of probation. 1,000 years of being treated like children who could not be trusted with important decisions. Jake looked around the hall and memorized every face he could see. The blue-skinned Altarians who laughed the loudest. the floating gas beings from Nebula 7 who pulsed with colors of amusement, the robot-like synthetics who clicked their approval in mechanical unison. Every single one of them was enjoying this moment. When the vote was called, Jake was not surprised by the result. 200 species voted to deny humanity full membership. Only 3 abstained, and those were probably just being polite. Not a single voice spoke in favor of Earth's application. The gavel came down with a sound like breaking glass. Humanity would remain in observer status for the foreseeable future. They could watch, but not participate. They could trade, but only under strict limits. They could speak, but no one had to listen. Chancellor Vexthara looked down at Jake with what might have been pity on a more human face. The decision is final. Perhaps in a few centuries, when your species has matured, you may reapply for consideration. Jake Morrison stood up slowly. The hall had begun to empty as aliens moved on to more important business. To them, humanity was already forgotten, just another primitive species that had been put in its proper place. Lisa tugged at his sleeve, urging him to leave quietly and maintain what little dignity they had left. But Jake had something to say first. "Thank you, Chancellor Vexthara." Jake's voice carried clearly through the hall. Some aliens stopped too. Listen, curious about what the defeated human might say. "Thank you for this educational experience. Earth will remember this day. We will remember every species that participated. We will remember every laugh, every insult, every dismissive gesture." He paused and looked around the hall one more time. "Most of all, we will remember that you judged us without really knowing. U.S. That might be the biggest mistake you ever make." The aliens who bothered to listen showed no concern on their faces. Some even seemed amused that the primitive human was making threats. They had already moved on mentally, discussing dinner, plans and entertainment for the evening. As Jake and Lisa walked out of the great hall, neither of them spoke until they reached their ship. The silence between them was heavy with shared humiliation and anger. "What do we do now?" Lisa asked as they prepared for the long journey back to Earth. Jake looked out at the stars through the viewport. "Now we go home and tell our people what happened here. We tell them exactly how the galaxy sees us." He was quiet for a moment. "And then we decide what we're going to do about it." The ship pulled away from Nexus Prime and began its journey back to Sol System. Behind them, the greatest gathering of intelligent species in the galaxy continued their important work of governing 1,000 worlds. They had already forgotten about the humans and their failed application. That would turn out to be their first and most costly mistake. 6 months had passed since Jake Morrison returned to Earth with news of humanity's rejection by the Galactic Council. The recording of their humiliation had been broadcast to every human settlement from Mars to the outer colonies. The reaction was swift and predictable. Humanity was angry. Colonel Danny Price stood in the command center of Luna Base, Earth's most secret military installation. The base had been carved deep into the moon's surface, hidden from alien observers who might be watching Earth. Around him, the brightest minds of humanity worked with desperate purpose. The mockery had stung every human who heard it, but it had also awakened something that had been sleeping in the human spirit. "Give me your reports," Danny called to his team. Leaders gathered around the central HOLO table. Dr. Rachel Martinez stepped forward first. She ran the Advanced Propulsion Division, a group of scientists who had been working on theoretical faster-than-light travel for decades. "Colonel, the quantum drive prototypes are working better than we hoped. We can now travel faster than light, without using the exotic matter that other species need. Our ships can jump between stars in days instead of months." Danny nodded and turned to the next scientist. Dr. Kevin Walsh handled weapons development, and his team had been busy since the humiliation began. "Sir, our kinetic bombardment systems are ready for field testing." The aliens have energy shields. That can stop laser beams and plasma bolts, but they're not designed to stop solid metal moving at 90% of light speed. Kevin brought up a holographic display showing test results. We've been studying alien technology for months. Their weapons are impressive, but they've grown soft. They've had peace for so long that they've forgotten what real war looks like. Maya Chun, the intelligence coordinator, spread new displays across the table. Her job was to gather information about every species in the Galactic Council, learning their strengths and weaknesses. Colonel, we've been analyzing Council species for months. Every single one of them has forgotten what it means to struggle. They've had comfortable lives for thousands of years. They don't remember how to fight for survival. Danny studied the data Maya had collected. Each alien species had detailed files showing their military capabilities, trade routes, and political structures. Most importantly, the files showed how long it had been since each species had fought a real war. For most of them, it had been centuries or millennia. What about our people? Danny asked Captain Alex Turner, who handled recruitment for the project. Sir, every military academy graduate for the past 5 years has volunteered for this operation. We've also brought back veterans from civilian jobs. The response has been overwhelming. Alex pulled up recruitment numbers. Every human who watched that broadcast wants to be part of what we're doing here. The broadcast had changed everything. When humans saw their representatives being mocked and dismissed, something fundamental shifted in the collective human psyche. The anger wasn't just about wounded pride. It was about being told they weren't good enough, weren't advanced enough, weren't worthy of respect. Fleet construction? Danny turned to Naval Commander Beth Williams. 150 ships completed. Sir, with another 200 under construction in the asteroid shipyards. They're not pretty like alien vessels, but they're fast and they hit hard. More importantly, they're crewed by people who have something to prove. Beth activated another display showing the new human fleet. The ships looked nothing like the elegant curves and flowing lines of alien vessels. Human ships were angular and aggressive, designed for function rather than beauty. They bristled with weapons and armor, built by a species that understood that space was hostile and unforgiving. Danny looked around the room at the faces of his team. These weren't just soldiers and scientists anymore. They were representatives of a species that had been told it wasn't good enough. Every person in this room had felt the sting of galactic dismissal, and they had turned that pain into determination. Timeline? He asked. 6 more months for final preparations, Dr. Martinez replied. The fleet will be ready by then. Our new quantum drives are already installed in the lead ships. The weapon systems are calibrated. Our people are trained and angry. Good, Danny said. His voice carried the weight of human determination. Because in 6 months, we're going to remind the galaxy why you should never underestimate a species. That fought its way out of a gravity well through pure stubborn refusal to give up. The room fell silent as everyone understood what he meant. Humanity was about to make its second first impression on the galaxy. This time, they would not be ignored or dismissed. Over the following months, the work continued in secret. Human. Engineers studied captured alien technology and found ways to improve it. Human tacticians developed strategies that took advantage of alien complacency. Human soldiers trained for combat scenarios that their enemies had never imagined. The most important development was psychological. Humanity had always been good at coming together when threatened, but the galactic humiliation had created something new. Every human settlement, from Earth cities to the mining colonies in the asteroid belt, was united in purpose. They had been called primitive and backward by creatures who had never known real struggle. Dr. Martinez made breakthrough after breakthrough in faster-than-light technology. Human quantum drives didn't just match alien propulsion systems. They exceeded them. Where alien ships needed days to travel between nearby star systems, human ships could make the same journey in hours. Dr. Walsh's weapons team developed systems that alien defenses couldn't handle. Energy shields were designed to deflect other energy weapons, but they were useless against solid projectiles moving at extreme velocities. Human kinetic weapons could punch through any known alien defense. Maya, Chun's intelligence network, grew to cover most of the galaxy. Human agents, disguised as traders and diplomats, gathered information about alien military capabilities. What they found was both encouraging and disturbing. The aliens were powerful but unprepared. They had technology that could destroy planets, but they had no experience using it in actual combat. Captain Turner's recruitment efforts brought in humans from every walk of life. Former soldiers came out of retirement. Civilians with technical skills volunteered for support roles. Even children too young to serve began training for the day when humanity might need every able-bodied. Commander Williams oversaw the construction of humanity's secret fleet. The ships were built in hidden facilities throughout the solar system, using resources from the asteroid belt and the outer planets. Each vessel was a masterpiece of human engineering, combining alien technology with human innovation. As the 6-month deadline approached, Danny Price stood once again in the Luna Base Command Center. But now it was different. The room hummed with confident energy instead of desperate determination. Humanity was no longer the species that had been laughed at in the Galactic Council chambers. "Status report," Danny called. "All systems ready." "Sir," came the unanimous response from his team leaders. "Fleet deployment?" "Standing by for your orders, Colonel," Commander Williams reported. Danny looked at the tactical display, showing human forces positioned throughout the solar system. 150 warships crewed by humans who had something to prove. Weapons that could penetrate any known defense. Propulsion systems that could outrun anything in the galaxy. Most importantly, warriors who had been forged by humiliation into something harder than steel. "Send the message to Admiral Jackson," Danny ordered. "Tell him humanity is ready to evolution." The message went out through quantum communication channels to the human fleet waiting in deep space. Admiral Carl Jackson, humanity's finest military commander, received his orders aboard the flagship Defiance. The time for hiding was over. Humanity was about to remind the galaxy that evolution wasn't just about time. It was about pressure, struggle, and the refusal to accept limits imposed by others. The aliens had mocked them 8 months ago, expecting them to remain silent and accept their inferior status. Instead, humanity had spent those months becoming something that would make the galaxy tremble. The second act was about to begin. The Corvin system had always been a symbol of alien superiority in this part of the galaxy. Their orbital cities sparkled like diamonds against the black of space, each one a marvel of engineering that housed millions of beings. Elegant ships moved between the cities with the grace of dancers, their smooth hulls reflecting the light of the Corvin star. Trade vessels from dozens of worlds visited regularly, making it one of the busiest and most prosperous systems in Council space. Admiral Carl Jackson stood on the bridge of the human dreadnought Defiance, watching the peaceful scene through the main viewport. The ship hung in empty space beyond the Corvin system's edge, invisible to alien sensors thanks to advanced stealth technology. Around him, his bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency. These were not the same humans who had sat silently while being mocked 8 months ago. These were predators who had been awakened by insult and forged by determination. Lieutenant Commander Ross monitored the tactical display from her station. "All ships report ready, Admiral," she announced quietly. Her voice carried the calm confidence of someone who had trained for this moment every day since the humiliation began. Carl nodded. He was a career military officer who had served in conflicts from the Mars Independence War to the asteroid mining disputes. But this was different. This wasn't about territory or resources. This was about respect and about showing the galaxy that humanity would not be dismissed. Through quantum communication channels, he could sense the presence of the entire human fleet. 150 ships positioned throughout the Corvin system, all invisible to alien detection. Each vessel was crewed by humans who had volunteered for this mission after watching their species be mocked before the entire galaxy. Send the message, Carl ordered. Across the Corvin system, every communication device suddenly activated. The message bypassed all security systems and broadcast simultaneously to every receiver in the system. The voice that spoke was calm, clear, and spoke perfect galactic standard. This is Admiral Carl Jackson of the human fleet. 8 months ago, your species participated in the mockery of humanity before the Galactic Council. You called us primitive. You called us backward. You laughed when our Chancellor suggested we needed 1,000 years to evolve into something worthy of your respect. In the Corvin orbital cities, beings stopped their daily activities to listen. Shopkeepers paused in serving customers. Workers stopped their tasks. Children looked up from their games. The voice continued, and something in its tone made every listener suddenly afraid. Today, we provide a demonstration of human evolution. We want to show you and the entire galaxy what 8 months of focused development can accomplish when a species is properly motivated. The human fleet decloaked. 150 ships materialized simultaneously throughout the Corvin system. They appeared in perfect military formation, surrounding every orbital city, every trade route, every defensive installation. Ships were unlike anything the Corvins had ever seen. Where alien vessels were smooth and elegant, human ships were angular and menacing. They looked like mechanical predators, bristling with weapons and armor. Panic erupted across the system. The Corvin defense fleet, caught completely unprepared, scrambled to respond. Alarms wailed in every city. Emergency broadcasts filled the communication channels. The Corvin military, which had not seen real combat in over 3 centuries, suddenly faced an enemy that had appeared from nowhere. Admiral, the Corvin defense fleet is moving to intercept, reported Lieutenant Commander Ross. 24 ships, mostly patrol vessels and system monitors. They're demanding we withdraw immediately. Carl studied the tactical display. The Corvin ships were beautiful examples of alien engineering, with sleek hulls and advanced energy weapons. They moved with elegant precision, like a ballet performed in the vacuum of space. But Carl could see their weakness. They were designed for ceremony and patrol duty, not for war. Targeting solutions locked on all enemy vessels, Ross reported. Fire, Carl ordered. The human attack was unlike anything the Corvins expected. Instead of energy beams or plasma bolts, the human weapons fired solid projectiles. Massive metal. Rods accelerated to enormous velocities by magnetic fields. The Corvin shields, designed to deflect energy weapons, were useless against solid matter, moving at 90% of light speed dot in 30 seconds. The entire Corvin defense fleet was neutralized. Not destroyed. The humans had been precise, targeting engines and weapon systems only. The alien crews survived, but their ships drifted helpless in space. The message was clear. We could have killed you all, but we chose not to. Phase 2. Carl ordered human boarding craft, launched from the main fleet. They moved like metal bullets through space, each one carrying a team of human marines in powered armor. The armor made them look like mechanical demons, with glowing red sensors and integrated weapon systems. They moved with military precision that terrified the watching aliens. The boarding teams swarmed over the disabled Corvin ships. They cut through hulls with tools that made alien metal part like paper. Within minutes, every Corvin vessel was under human control. The alien crews were secured but unharmed. The humans had demonstrated something more frightening than brutality. They had shown perfect military efficiency. But the most disturbing phase was yet to come. Human engineering ships approached the Corvin orbital defense platforms. These massive installations had protected the system for centuries, equipped with weapons that could destroy entire fleets. The humans didn't attack them with weapons. Instead, they began to dismantle them. Human engineers in powered suits swarmed over the defense platforms like mechanical insects. They worked with terrifying efficiency, stripping away advanced technology piece by piece. They didn't destroy the platforms. They took them apart like mechanics working on old vehicles. Within hours, defensive systems that had taken decades to build were reduced to floating scrap. The Corvin government sent desperate messages to other Council species, begging for help. But the human fleet jammed all long-range communications. The system was cut off from the rest of the galaxy, isolated and helpless. Carl Jackson watched the operation unfold with grim satisfaction. Every phase proceeded exactly as planned. Human forces had taken control of one of the most secure systems in the galaxy without killing a single alien civilian. They had demonstrated technological superiority, military precision, and most importantly, restraint. "Admiral, all objectives secured," reported Commander Ross. "The system is under our control." Carl activated the system-wide communication channel one final time. "Citizens of the Corvin system, this is Admiral Jackson. Your military forces have been neutralized and your defenses disabled. No civilians have been harmed, and no civilian facilities have been damaged. This was a military demonstration, not an act of war." He paused, letting the implications sink in throughout the system. "The human fleet will remain in this system for 24 hours. During this time, any Council species wishing to discuss humanity's application for membership may approach under a flag of truce. We guarantee safe passage for all diplomatic vessels." The final part of his message was directed to the galaxy beyond. To all species watching these events, consider this a preview of what happens when you underestimate humanity. We are no longer the species you mocked 8 months ago. We have evolved, just as you suggested we should. The question now is whether the rest of the galaxy can evolve enough to accept us as equals. As the message ended, alien news networks across the galaxy rushed to cover the story. The footage was transmitted to every world in Council space. Human ships appearing from nowhere, alien defenses crumbling in minutes, and an entire star system falling under the control of the species that had been called primitive just months before. The reaction was immediate and galaxy-wide. Some species called for military action against the humans. Others demanded emergency council sessions. A few wise leaders began composing diplomatic messages to Earth, seeking dialogue before the situation escalated further. But one fact became terrifyingly clear to every intelligence analyst and military commander who studied the footage. Humans had not just evolved in 8 months. They had become something to be feared. The species that had been dismissed as backward had demonstrated capabilities that surpassed most Council members, and they had done it all while showing restraint that many alien species would not have managed. The Corvin system could have been a smoldering ruin. Instead, it was an intact demonstration of human power held carefully in check. The galaxy would never be the same. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened within 48 hours of the Corvin incident. The great chamber that had once echoed with laughter at humanity's expense now hummed with nervous energy and fearful whispers. Representatives from 200 worlds gathered in unprecedented haste, their usual ceremonial procedures abandoned in favor of urgent debate. Chancellor Vexthara's crystalline form flickered with agitated colors as he called the session to order. His rainbow body, which had displayed amusement during humanity's first visit, now showed the deep purples and sharp reds that indicated serious alarm among his species. "We are gathered to address the unprovoked attack by the human species on the sovereign Corvin system," he announced, his voice carrying none of its former confidence. President Helen Parker of Earth stood at the human delegation podium, flanked by Admiral Carl Jackson and Colonel Danny Price. Her presence commanded attention in a way that Jake Morrison's diplomatic politeness never could. She was not here to ask for favors or beg for acceptance. She was here to demand what humanity had earned, unprovoked. Helen's voice carried across the chamber with steel undertones that made several alien delegates shift uncomfortably in their seats. "Chancellor, I believe you may be suffering from selective memory syndrome. Perhaps we should review recent history." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. No species had ever spoken to the Chancellor with such directness. The established protocols of the Council demanded respectful deference to senior members, especially to the Chancellor himself. The humans violated the most fundamental laws of galactic civilization, protested Silmora, the Corvin delegate. Her serpentine form coiled with agitation as she spoke. "They attacked without declaration, without cause, without following any recognized rules of engagement." "Without what?" Helen interrupted, her voice cutting through the chamber like a blade. "Without being insulted first? Without being dismissed as primitive? Without being told we needed 1,000 years to evolve past our current limitations?" She gestured to the display screens around the chamber. "Shall we review the recordings of our last visit here?" The screens activated, showing footage from 8 months earlier. The alien delegates watched themselves mock humanity, laugh at human achievements, and casually dismiss an entire species as unworthy of serious consideration. Many shifted uncomfortably as they saw their own participation in the systematic humiliation of Earth's representatives. The recording showed Chancellor Vexthara calling humans primitive mammals. It showed Silmora questioning human intelligence. It showed Ulanith suggesting 1,000-year probation period, as if humanity were children who needed to learn proper behavior. Most damaging of all, it showed the laughter and casual dismissal that had followed each insult. "You wanted to see human evolution," Helen continued, her voice growing stronger with each word. "Well, here it is on display. We evolved past the need to sit quietly while being insulted. We evolved past the belief that diplomatic nicety is more important than respect. We evolved past the assumption that older species are automatically wiser species." Ulaneth, the Drakmor representative, raised one of his tentacles in what passed for a request to speak. "Your actions were completely disproportionate to any perceived insult. The Corvin system has been left defenseless against pirates and raiders." "Wrong," Admiral Jackson interjected, stepping forward with military bearing that made him seem larger than his actual size. "The Corvin system has been left with a very clear understanding of human capabilities. Not one Corvin citizen was harmed during our operation. Not one civilian facility was damaged. We demonstrated precision and restraint that most species in this chamber could not match." "Restraint?" Chancellor Vexthara's form flared bright red, a color that indicated outrage among his kind. "You dismantled an entire planetary defense network. You boarded sovereign vessels. You occupied a council member's territory." "We removed a threat," Colonel Price said calmly, his tone suggesting that he was discussing routine maintenance rather than military action. Standard human military doctrine when dealing with potentially hostile forces. The fact that we could have done much worse, but chose not to, should be seen as evidence of our civilized nature. The chamber fell silent as the implications became clear to everyone present. If this demonstration of overwhelming force was human restraint, what would actual human warfare look like? Several delegates began quiet conversations with their advisors, no doubt discussing their own defensive capabilities. Dr. Maya Chun now serving as humanity's intelligence coordinator, activated another set of displays. We have been monitoring galactic communications since the Corvin demonstration. 17 species have approached us through diplomatic channels, seeking dialogue and cooperation. 12 others have begun military preparations, presumably viewing us as a threat to galactic stability. And you are a threat, snarled Dectron, the hegemony representative. His biomechanical form sparked with electrical discharge as he spoke. Your species exhibits all the classic patterns of aggressive expansion. You demonstrate superior technology, then use it to intimidate peaceful civilizations. Do we? Helen smiled, but there was no warmth in the expression. Because our historical records show that every species in this chamber expanded through conquest at some point in their development. The Zephyrians conquered 47 worlds before joining the Council. The Corvins enslaved 3 entire species. During their colonial period, the Drakmor literally consumed the biospheres of neighboring planets to fuel their expansion. More uncomfortable shifting throughout the chamber. These were historical facts that most species preferred not to discuss. In polite company, each civilization had its period of aggressive growth, but they had all agreed to forget those unpleasant details in favor of their current peaceful coexistence. The hegemony itself was built on the systematic elimination of 6 competing intelligences, Helen continued relentlessly. The difference between us and you is that we are being honest about our capabilities. We could have destroyed the Corvin fleet completely. We could have bombarded their cities from orbit. We could have done what most of your species did during your own periods of expansion. She paused and looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of delegates who had participated in humanity's humiliation. Instead, we demonstrated restraint and precision. We showed that we can project power without becoming destroyers. We proved that we have evolved beyond the need for unnecessary violence. Chancellor Vexthara's colors had shifted to deep purple, indicating serious concern among his species. What exactly do you want from this council? The same thing we wanted 8 months ago, Helen replied. Recognition as a full member of this council. The right to participate in galactic civilization as equals, not as subjects or children requiring adult supervision. The respect that any intelligent species deserves. And if we refuse this demand? Silmora asked, though her tone suggested. She already knew the answer. Helen Parker's smile was neither diplomatic nor reassuring. Then we will continue to evolve. We will continue to develop our capabilities. We will continue to demonstrate that underestimating humanity is a costly mistake. She paused. And I suspect that in another 8 months, this conversation will have a very different tone. The chamber erupted in urgent discussions. Some delegates demanded immediate military action against the human threat. Others called for diplomatic engagement. A few wise voices suggested that accommodation might be preferable to confrontation with a species that had demonstrated such rapid technological advancement. There will be a recess while we consider this matter, Chancellor Vexthara announced. His crystalline form had settled into the neutral blues that indicated deep thought among his kind. During the recess, emergency meetings took place throughout the station. Military advisors consulted with their governments. Intelligence officers analyzed the human demonstration for weaknesses. Diplomats crafted messages designed to defuse the crisis without losing face. But the fundamental question remained: could the galaxy afford to have humanity as an enemy? The Corvin demonstration had shown that humans could project power anywhere in Council space. Their technology was advancing at an unprecedented rate. Most concerning of all, they had shown that they could act with decisive force while maintaining moral restraint. When the session reconvened, the vote was called with unusual speed. The question was simple. Would humanity be granted full membership in the Galactic Council? This time, the vote was not unanimous. This time, humanity did not lose. The margin was narrow, but it was enough. Earth had achieved what they had been denied 8 months earlier, but they had achieved it through strength rather than supplication. As the results were announced, Helen Parker stood again at the podium. Humanity accepts this decision and looks forward to contributing to galactic civilization as equals. We hope this marks the beginning of a new era of cooperation and mutual respect. But everyone in the chamber understood the unspoken message. Humanity had proven that respect could not be given. It had to be earned. And they had earned it in the most direct way possible. The galaxy had mocked humanity, expecting them to remain silent and accept their dismissal. 1 year after the Corvin demonstration, Ambassador Jake Morrison walked through the corridors of Nexus, prime with a confidence that would have seemed impossible during his first visit. The same aliens who had once laughed at humanity now stepped aside respectfully as he passed. Some nodded politely. Others avoided eye contact entirely. All of them understood that humanity was no longer the species that could be dismissed with casual mockery. The changes went far beyond simple diplomatic courtesy. Human technology, once derided as primitive, had become the most sought-after commodity in the galaxy. The quantum drive systems that Dr. Martinez had developed were now being manufactured under license for dozens of alien species. Human military advisors were training alien forces in tactics that had been forgotten during millennia of comfortable peace. Jake entered the council chamber where a new session was beginning. The human delegation now sat in the senior member section, their voices carrying equal weight with species that had dominated galactic politics for thousands of years. The seating arrangement told the story better than any speech could. Humanity had not just joined the council, they had become one of its most influential members. The motion before the council, announced Chancellor Vextara, his tone now carefully respectful when addressing human concerns, is the establishment of joint patrol fleets for Outer Rim security. The Terran Federation has volunteered to lead this initiative. The proposal had been humanity's idea, but it addressed a genuine problem that had been growing for decades. Pirates and raiders had become increasingly bold in the galaxy's frontier regions, taking advantage of the fact that most council species had grown too comfortable with peace to maintain effective military forces. Admiral Carl Jackson, now serving as humanity's military liaison to the council, stood to address the assembly. His presence commanded immediate attention from delegates who had once dismissed human military capabilities. The human fleet stands ready to provide patrol vessels and training personnel for any species requesting assistance. We have already demonstrated the effectiveness of our approach in several sectors.